Okay, so I think the question a lot of people are looking at this whole debate as right now, first and foremost, do we need NATO right now?
The short answer is no. NATO is a product of an era that is long gone. Europe is one of the most stable and wealthiest regions in the world. Russia, which is sort of the bogeyman that's on everyone's mind when it comes to NATO, is a largely doesn't really stand a chance against most of the larger nations in Europe. So this is largely a sort of a defense alliance that has sort of outlived its usefulness, I think.
There's a lot of people that will go back and say that NATO proved that it was worthwhile to remain part of back on September 11th, when that was really the first time you saw every country involved in the mutual defense of one of its members being the United States. That's one of the arguments being made. But, the president is saying, look, we're paying into NATO. Not everybody else is paying into NATO. But are we alienating some of our allies even outside of that NATO alliance, like Germany? We still interact with Germany regardless of NATO.
Well, I don't think we necessarily need NATO to have sort of peaceful, friendly relationships with nations. I mean, the question I always ask to people who advocate X policy when it comes to these treaties and these alliances in the realm of foreign policy, particularly a defense treaty, is, are you willing? It's like, are we, the U.S., are we willing to kill people for it? Because that's essentially what it comes down to. It's a military alliance.
Okay.
There's a lot. My friend and colleague John Grover today, in the American Conservative, he wrote about the push to put Ukraine and to make Ukraine a part of NATO. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's a lot of tension between Russia and Ukraine right now. So if Ukraine became a part of NATO, we would be legally obligated to defend them. Are we willing to use the American military to defend American soldiers, American weaponry? Are we really willing to use them to defend Ukraine against Russia? The answer is not always necessarily going to be no. I'm not willing to. I'm not willing to use the military in X situation. But it's a hard question that we have to ask ourselves.
So as we move forward, if you had your way, if you had the president's ear and he said, Jerrod, what should our relationship with NATO be moving forward? What is it? If we're not worried about the Cold War, although a lot of people will say Russia's still an issue, but that's another discussion for another day. What does our relationship with NATO pretend to be in the future?
Well, if NATO has to exist, it should be for sort of mutual defense in the face of existential threats only. In an ideal world, you wouldn't need NATO. Places like the United States and Germany and England and France, these are all incredibly wealthy countries who are able to take care of themselves. So in an ideal world, you would just people talk about the benefits with trade and everything that comes along with these organizations. To say that you need NATO to have free trade with countries in Europe just shows to me a sort of lack of imagination. So yeah, I would say it's sort of the Washingtonian thing, or was it Jefferson? I can't remember. One
of those guys.
Yeah, sort of alliances. Entangling, avoiding entangling alliances and things of that nature.
All right. Well, we're going to see how this pans out over the next couple of days as NATO the summit continues. Jerrod A, good to see you tonight, and we're back after this.